Well, hello again all my YouTubers, and thanks once more for giving up your valuable time to view another vintage off-road motorcycle as we continue to look at more interesting machines here in the new series of World of Classic Dirt Bike videos. Now this time around it's the turn of another British classic as we take a browse at Steve Parkins' lovely 1971 BSA B50T. Now this featured bike was not really a bike at all initially, as Steve built this machine using some of the surplus BSA parts he had lying around his workshop. And the parts that he never had to complete the bike he managed to find from other outside sources. Although the main reason that Steve put this bike together was that he needed a bike to compete in the classic dirt bike event, the Nostalgia Scramble, which was held in Sedberg in Cumbria each August. Now although Steve never had a complete bike, what he did have was plenty surplus BSA parts lying around his workshop, and although not enough to build a full machine, he certainly had plenty to make a start. Now unfortunately the frame was one of the things Steve didn't have, but after many hours surfing the internet, a donor chassis was found and then purchased and subsequently delivered to Steve's home. It was then of course inspected for any signs of fatigue or damage and was then prepped for painting in this lovely 2-pack silver colour, with a final coating of course of hard wearing anti-chip lacquer then added to finish it. Now Steve had quite a few of these BSA B50 engine parts lying around, but certainly not enough to build a complete motor, so Steve made an inventory of what parts he required and try and pick them up from other outside sources. Or better still, Steve was going to try and purchase a complete BSA B50 motor. Now these old B50 engines are very rare to find complete, and that's even here in the UK, where you'd think there would be a plentiful supply. Now any of these engines that do come onto the market are very pricey and still get snapped up almost immediately by the trials and motocross riders who know the true value of these old BSA lumps. But to cut a long story short, Steve drew a blank trying to find parts of a full motor on the internet, although he did eventually find a complete engine at the local classic dirt bike show in the bike jumble department. Now the motor was very tatty but complete, and Steve was not that worried about the state of the engine, as he was going to strip the motor and do a complete overhaul anyhow. And he was also going to do some mods to the cylinder head and gearbox. But anyhow, after many hours of work, this better than new engine was then fitted back into the newly finished frame. Now the front forks of course were also stripped of all their old seals, etc., and these were totally rebuilt with all brand new seals, oil and stanchion dust covers. Now Steve never had any wheels to build his brand new bike, so a complete new set of wheels were fitted to Steve's new machine, along with these heavy duty spokes, which of course were then mated to those lovely BSA hubs. Now of course Steve already had many of the parts to build his new bike, and as luck would have it, this gorgeous fuel tank was one such part, which looks absolutely superb fitted to the bike, especially with these very nice British flag BSA graphics on the side. And of course, as you can see, Steve has managed to source this very nice seat for his new BSA bike. It looks very comfortable, and of course you could have fitted any manner of type of seat to this machine, but this particular seat that Steve has fitted looks just right. Now many of the other smaller ancillary items that Steve fitted to this new machine were all brand new. Steve didn't see any point in fitting second-hand parts to this bike, so all the smaller items like the front and rear mudguards, etc., were all brand new fitments. And once again, Steve could have fitted all manner of makes of rear shocks onto his new bike, and there of course are many makes and models to choose from for these classic dirt bikes, although it looks like Steve has opted to go for a set of these lovely Falcon shocks, which of course are made right here in the UK. Now, a full set of cables, grips and throttle gasser were also fitted, and a new pair of these high quality Renthal bars were also bolted onto the bike. Now, Steve of course wanted to get the maximum use from his new BSA bike and decided to go the extra mile and also register the bike to enable it to be used legally on the road. So hence all the extra control switches and lighting fixtures fitted to the bike. Now, Steve's thinking was that if he didn't want to take the bike green laning or classic scrambling, then he could just find his favourite piece of tarmac and enjoy the bike on the open road. So in the end he had a bike that was basically a win-win situation either way. Now, the exhaust system on this machine of course is no mufflers whatsoever on these bikes, just a straight through exhaust pipe through to the tailpipe at the rear, and these exhausts are basically just standard fitments for these old BSA B50 motors. Now, Steve told me that this particular bike building project took him more than a year to complete, although naturally he wasn't at it every single day, you must understand, as he also had a few other bike building projects on the go in his workshop at the time. But nevertheless, I'm sure you'll agree that Steve has made an absolutely superb job of building this bike when you consider it was not really a machine at all initially, and has just been built up using spare parts and parts he has gathered from outside sources. Now, these pictures here were taken just prior to the bike's inaugural debut at the Kendal Classic Nostalgia Scramble a few years ago, and I just happened to grab these pictures of the bike before it got absolutely covered in mud. So there you have it, another British classic off-road and even on-road vintage motorcycle. That's Steve Parkins' 1971 BSA B50 bike build project. Now, I do have more classic dirt bike projects already in the pipeline here on my YouTube channel and set to feature quite soon. So don't forget to leave your comments on this video below, or better still, just subscribe to my channel to see more of these iconic off-road race bikes. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoy the video. This video was brought to you in association with WorldSport, the world's #1 supplier for all your off-road and leisure sportswear. Just visit their online website for more details.